This episode of Synchronicity is brought to you by eatdreambee.com. Let me tell you what eatdreambee.com is. First of all, it's a lovely website. Go check it out. Hardy and Paul are wonderful guys. They've graciously sponsored this podcast. So support these guys. I'm going to tell you about the Apple Chamomile Dream Bar, which I have a 12-pack for. So I'm just going to tell you exactly how I've used them in the past 2 weeks since I've had the Dream Bars. Number one, late at night when I got the munchies, I ate a Dream Bar. It's healthy, it's delicious, and I don't eat things that I shouldn't be eating late at night. Number two, here's a little tip for you people on the go. My wife, Alexis, she swears by the Dream Bar. She actually now is keeping them in the diaper bag for our son, Eli, because when you're on the go and you need something to eat, but you don't want to go get something not good for you, it's a quick way to satiate your hunger. Now, let me tell you about the other thing about the Dream Bar, which I find to be perhaps the most important part of it. It's a calming, relaxing treat. So like I said, I get the Apple Chamomile Bars. Chamomile, who doesn't like chamomile tea? Right? I mean, come on. It's delicious. It relaxes you. Well, I don't know chamomile. Would I classify chamomile tea as delicious? No, but it's soothing. But I will say that Apple Chamomile Dream Bars are delicious. So once again, check them out. eatdreambee.com/sync, SYNC. You get a special offer just for you for listening to this podcast. So thanks a lot to the guys at eatdreambee.com. And please go pick up some Dream Bars today. Thanks, guys. And here's the episode.
You can look at suffering as almost a psychedelic experience.
This is Synchronicity.
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 Welcome to Synchronicity. Wait, no, I didn't do that right, but I'm going to keep it rolling. Welcome to Synchronicity. Wait. We're really getting off to a great start this week. Welcome to episode 59 of Synchronicity. My guest this week is Jay Weingarten. Jay's been on the show before. This is his return visit. So welcome Jay back. Everyone give him a nice clap in wherever you're listening to. We're going to get to Jay in just a second. We had a great conversation. But I got some other stuff to talk about, right? Okay. I want to talk about a little bit about I know this is probably the third week we're talking about politics, or I'm talking about politics in the beginning of this podcast, but I still think it's everything is still kind of right? We're still seeing all this inflammatory and conflict-driven stuff. I mean, Donald Trump, that's an interesting name for him, Donald Trump. We're still seeing him send out tweets, distracting or not distracting or just reacting, whatever it is, and it's a whole big thing. And a lot of people are describing it as a post-fact era, or post-truth era, where it doesn't actually matter if you tell the truth. If you repeat yourself and say things and, rally people and then portray the media as not telling the truth, it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't have to be true, which is a scary concept, but kind of closer to what the nature of reality is anyway. I mean, us trying to define certain things with facts is not always the easiest thing to do. Anyway, my point is we have to figure out a better way collectively and individually to talk to people who don't agree with us. And I think I've mentioned it, maybe I haven't on this podcast before, but if you're looking for someone with really, really helpful, practical, excellent advice and ways to look at the situation, it's not me, but it is this guy, Van Jones. Just tune into what he's doing. He's quickly becoming a modern day mystic in my eyes. I just saw him give a wonderful speech at the Dakota Access Pipeline protest, where he was basically saying, listen, you guys are digging up death. That's what you guys are doing. That's what oil is. It's death. It's been dead for millions of years, and you're digging it up, and it creates more death. There's spills. It creates asthma. It creates carbon monoxide. It's pollution. And he's like, what did you expect was going to happen? And he started laying out all of these wonderful symbolic gestures of how we need to get in touch with the sun, not only as an energy source, but as a metaphor, right? I mean, if you look through any of the Abrahamic religions, many other ones, even going through the cults of like Osiris, the Egyptian stuff, the sun symbolically is a very, very transformative figure. And he also talks about the wind, and the wind, again, is a very mystical and symbolic figure or energy. Hanuman, right? I chant to Hanuman every single day. The Hanuman Chalisa is the wind, son of the wind, Anjaneya. Jesus is often spoken about as the wind whispering through, and I believe that's kind of what his consciousness is all about. So Van Jones, just tune into him. He's not only talking about things that are important, but he's trying to engage people who don't agree with him or share his viewpoints in a really compassionate way. So just tune into Van Jones. As a reminder, if you want to, I'm posting a lot of this stuff in the Synchronicity Facebook community. If you want to get involved, we're close to 250 people right now as I'm recording this on November 29th. Check it out. Like, we're having a good time in there, and I'm posting that Van Jones thing I mentioned. It's in there. So you can find that on the website, syncpodcast.com, syncpodcast.com. It's in the menu. Find it on Facebook, the group. It's cool. It's a closed group, so I'll need to approve you, but I approve you, so just ask to come in. Okay, right. And now look, I am now looking. Oh, here it is. I couldn't understand what my writing was. I've jotted down my little notes. Here's a couple of other things that I checked out in the past 2 weeks that I think you guys might enjoy. If you have access to it, wink, wink, nod, nod, and you're not in the UK, Planet Earth 2, oh my God. It's incredible. I made the mistake of, well, not the mistake. I had some edible marijuana on a bus trip up to New York recently, and I put on Planet Earth 2, and let's say I had a little bit too much edible marijuana. I was tearing up. I mean, this on the bus, I had sunglasses on so no one could see me doing it. I tried to do one of those fake yawns, like where you yawn and maybe your eyes are watering, but it's not. You're crying because you're watching Planet Earth 2 on a bus. Luckily, there was no one sitting next to me, so it wasn't like a total catastrophe. But man, this is some moving stuff. We got to protect this planet. This goes right in line with the Dakota Access Pipeline. Listen, all of this stuff that's going on right now, you got to pick and choose what you want to get involved with. I personally think right now, this Dakota Access Pipeline protest stuff is so incredibly important. Pay attention to it, because the Native Americans have been marginalized and taken advantage of, right? Forever in this country, in our modern country of the United States. So the fact that it's still happening, and it's happening in such a horrible way. I mean, they're shooting these people with non-lethal weapons, quote unquote, but it's causing real harm, and they just don't want their water to potentially be poisoned. And it's not too dissimilar to what the residents near Bismarck, they didn't want the pipeline there. Not to mention, I was reading about it. Most of this oil isn't even going to the United States. It's exported to other places. So it's really it's a really tough situation. Tune into it. There's ways to help, whether through donations, whether getting involved, whether talking about it, whether putting pressure on Congress people, senators. Really, this is an issue that I think we should be tuning into, not necessarily Donald Trump's tweets. But, listen, those are interesting too. Another thing I saw, also very emotional, that's called a segue, people, or it's not called a segue because it's not a segue. Finding Dory. Oh my God, this was an emotional roller coaster, and I'm very mad at all of you for not warning me that this was such a Jesus, man, great movie. But these Pixar movies, really, they tug at the heartstrings there. And then finally, Westworld. Start watching Westworld. It's incredible. A multi-layered, multifaceted, brilliantly acted, just a fantastic show, touching on so many amazing concepts. The intersection of artificial intelligence and human consciousness. What is consciousness? Just so many. It's great. Just watch the show. I love when you're watching something and the production value and just that you can tell there's so much behind this show, which admittedly the original Westworld, written by Michael Crichton, was kind of a campy, ridiculous movie about a spaghetti Western set with killer robots. This is not, it's not, it's kind of what's happening in Westworld, but really just check that out. Really, really, really awesome. Okay, let's get to Jay, right? I've rambled on long enough. That was quite a little bit. Sorry, fellows. And what's the feminine fellows? I don't know. Someone write to me at noah@syncpodcast.com and let me know what the feminine version of fellows is. I would like to know. Ladies? I don't know. Jay. Okay. Jay, we originally had this podcast scheduled a couple of weeks. It was actually scheduled the day after the presidential elections. And Jay and I were both anticipating a Hillary victory, I think, as most people who were paying attention to the polls were. And that didn't happen. And Jay hit me up the next day. It's like, hey, man, I don't know if I can do this. I'm pretty down. I don't know how to process this. And I was like, yeah, I totally understand. I tried to cajole him into doing it, saying that it might be cathartic to talk about it, but it really wasn't in the right space to talk about it. So, and I get that. A lot of my friends still aren't in the right space to really talk about it. But Jay I don't want to say he got over it, but he figured out a way to kind of transmute that, what he was experiencing, into something that I'll read at the beginning of the episode that he wrote and posted on Facebook, which is just a really heartfelt and genuine, beautiful stuff from him, which is so dissimilar to what he normally puts on social media, which is this kind of irreverent, silly, goofy persona, which is one of the great things about this episode. If you follow Jay's comedy, which you can find at jweingarten.horse, that's his website, you don't really get a sense for the person necessarily underneath the persona. So it was really great to be able to talk to him. I've spoken to Jay, obviously, off podcast, and he's not doing his big bit and shtick with me. Really deep guy, really just... You can tell he feels things very intensely. He talks about when he was going through some difficult times, how it was very just after a breakup or a professional thing, it can be really hard for him to feel funny and be funny, which I think is probably got to be one of the most challenging things about being a comedian, is having to potentially be the person who makes people laugh during times where maybe people aren't, not necessarily in the mood to laugh, but aren't ready to laugh. Who knows? So we delve into kind of this intersection of comedy and, making people feel a certain way or attempting to get some resonance out of them. You know what? Here's the thing. I could talk about this conversation ad nauseum, and I could basically recap the whole thing. Why don't you just listen to it? Jay's awesome. His comedy's great. He's a really deep and interesting fellow. I don't have to use the feminine there because he's a guy. Just listen to the episode. I'm gonna cut it off right here and get you to it. So without further ado, here is Jay Weingarten. Thank you, by the way, for coming on again. I always love repeat guests, especially when they're funny and fun like you. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So we spoke about this a couple of times before, and we decided this would be a decent place to start given the current climate with the election stuff, but not wanting to dwell on it and get people kind of in a somber state of mind. But I want to start for the listeners with a post that you wrote on Facebook. And I'll preface this by saying that anyone who follows Jay on Facebook, Twitter, any other social media, including his website, it's a very irreverent and kind of, funny place to be. And you don't see very quote unquote serious posts. So I will preface that. So I'm going to read your statement. I don't know if I'm going to read the whole thing. I'm going to link to it on the podcast page, but I want to give people an idea of kind of what you wrote. I guess it was almost a week after the election. And after we had spoken, we had a podcast scheduled the day after the election. And I think you and I both thought oh, Hillary will be elected, and like we'll just talk about like, hey, first woman president, and just talk about fun stuff. And obviously that changed. So I'm going to read this for you, listeners, right here. So this is Jay. I've never written any real thoughts on Facebook except a couple years ago when my sister got engaged, and I think people thought I was joking around. So please bear with me as I try something different. I believe we are here on this earth to maintain a quiet mind, to keep our hearts wide open, and to relieve suffering. It is critical right now that we give our time, money, energy, and presence towards alleviating suffering that is happening to marginalized and oppressed people all around us all the time. I stand strongly with immigrants, Latinos, African Americans, the LGBTQ community, women, low-income individuals, Muslims, Jews, people who are physically and/or mentally challenged, and everyone else who feels afraid about our current time. So many of us are filled with fear, consumed by a nasty ego that creates an illusion of separateness. I think that this separateness, along with our desire for oneness, is the root cause of our constant suffering. And when we look at the earth and at the way that other beings are practicing, we feel that they are living their lives with eyes closed. And we strongly feel the pain that stems from their lack of awareness. I believe that all around us are billions of souls at every level of incarnation imaginable. To know during which lifetime one will awaken from a sleepwalk is impossible. Because so many individuals continue to live after life, causing immense harm to others, we must respond to this challenge and do what we can to help those in need. And this is difficult work, because when you truly open your heart to someone who is suffering, you experience tremendous pain. So many people decide to respond with their ego and pull away when they get in the presence of suffering because they can't handle it. But more than ever, we have to keep our hearts wide open, because when we experience this pain, we begin to realize that there is no them, there is only us. When you reach this point, you are beyond your ego, and you just can't turn away anymore. I want to thank you all and say it is a real honor to live with you in this incarnation and to help each other awaken. Yes, it is important to remember we are each other's vehicles for awakening. We are all training to become free. Lastly, I'd like to say I am always here to listen to anyone's fears or anxieties, so please feel free to send me a personal message at any time. I'm learning a lot about having conversations with people, and I want to continue to connect. I offer my ears to anyone who feels alone. I'm here, I'm listening, and I stand with you. I love you all more than you could ever know. May we keep our hearts wide open and work to relieve those who are suffering. May we all play our part in the engine of love, healing, and understanding. And then you provide some links to ways that people can help, which I don't want to get lost here. So this is obviously incredibly atypical of the type of things that you share. And I'm sure for everyone listening, they realize just incredibly how poignant and thoughtful that statement was. So can you tell me just a little bit about how the election impacted you, kind of how you were feeling, and why you felt, or why you felt compelled to write something like this, which is, quote unquote, a break in character for you online?
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing all that. And I guess how I felt was, I felt, is that a dog?
Yeah, it's my dog Maceo. How's the baby, by the way?
She's great. She's right next to me right now. She is a beautiful, beautiful girl. Had her for 8 months now, and I'm sad because I'll be leaving her for about 3 weeks coming up
to go on your tour.
That's going to be, yeah, I've never been away from her for more than a night. So I'm a little sad, but at the same time, I can't wait to see her after getting back,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's always sad. I just left Eli, my son, for 2 days, and I was pretty sad. But you gotta go make money for the baby. You gotta go. Daddy's got to work. Let's not let this get out. But to go back, if Maceo barks again, I'll put him away. But yeah, to go back to what you were saying about the election and everything.
Yeah, I guess after the initial wave of shock subsided, because I also thought that our podcast, we would just be sort of having a lighthearted and joyous discussion the next day, and feeling positive, and just sort of like, at least not being really unable to talk.
Right.
So that after that started to kind of not become as overwhelming. I was looking at social media, and I think, it was a strange time to be on social media. People were very transparent about their fears, and a lot of people were, panicking and also just very angry. I think that was
Yes.
The most common emotion, and I guess when I wanted to say something, but I didn't want to. I don't know. I guess that's sort of how I always approach everything. Is I just want to do something the opposite of how most people are responding to something. And I guess that's probably why I express myself the way I do online normally. Or there's a lot of different reasons for that, but the point is, I wanted to bring some sort of new perspective,
Right,
and really speak from the heart. And I spent a lot of time alone and thinking, and I spent a few days rewriting this post, and I just wanted to provide some sort of hope and my support to say that, no matter what happens, there will be people who will care deeply and who will be there to help, to help out. And I guess I didn't see that coming out. I mean, I know there were certainly people who naturally, wanted to step up, but I didn't think there was enough of that. And so I just wanted to kind of do what I could.
Well, I mean, and I think that is, if more people did that, I think we'd be a lot better off. And I hear what you're saying. I'm not dissimilar in a way when I see a lot of people doing something. At the very least, it's kind of like a wake-up call to be like, well, what exactly is going on here? It's not that because everyone is doing something or reacting a certain way, there's something wrong with it, but you let your curiosity is piqued to examine what's going on. And I, like you, I noticed the same thing. It's why I did a bonus podcast talking about this stuff, not because I think I have the level of political acumen to provide some, cohesive analysis of what's going on, but to provide some alternative perspectives to what I saw too, and still continue to see, just to be clear, which is an overflowing of negativity, fear, anger, hatred on both sides, and some of it, obviously, this Nazi stuff, Steve Bannon, Richard Spencer, alt-right stuff is, legitimately terrifying that this stuff is in any way being normalized. I was dying laughing with my sister last night because we were looking at the CNN headline that says, are Jews people? And it's like, are Jews people? I didn't know this is a question we were supposed to be asking. And obviously there's a level of comedy to it, but it's also they're actually putting that on CNN. So when you share something like that, not only is it a way for you to kind of process what's going on around you, but it also becomes kind of a prism that other people can look to and see, some other way of dealing with something, which, let's be clear, I think part of the issue with how we got here is that we're at this crazy point in time where you pretty much can't, if you disagree with someone at this point over the election, they're almost your enemy. It's tearing families apart. Friends are, it's just crazy what we lost the ability to engage with each other, and disagree without totally being, at each other's throats. So, I mean, I think it was super awesome. And I mean, I know in speaking with you the day after, we're we don't know if we're going to do this or not. You were definitely going through those things. But now, when we were just talking before this one, and seeing how you've gotten back on social media and doing kind of your regular thing, what became the turning point for you? Was it this post? Was it thinking about it? But how did you kind of get through? Not saying it's done, you're not upset about anything, but what was the turning point for kind of processing and integrating it in, figuring out how you want to move forward with this stuff?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess I wanted to sort of take a moment of silence for a period, and I think, my type way of expressing myself I didn't first of all feel like I'm only able to do what I do when I'm feeling good.
Right. We spoke about that. Yeah.
So, I couldn't really do much. I was feeling pretty depressed, and that took a while to be able to get back to work. And I also just thought, it wasn't what people needed at that time.
Right.
I didn't think it would make sense, and I couldn't do it. So yeah, I just wanted to take a moment of silence, and then I did feel. I mean, I guess I had been feeling this desire because I feel like so few people actually understand what I'm trying to do. I just based on a lot of questions I get and things like that.
What questions? What questions?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get too off topic, but just, yeah, it's very clear to me that a lot of people don't understand what I'm doing. A lot. And it's interesting to me, but yeah, people I don't know. We can talk about that later, but I guess just to go over, I had been feeling the desire to express myself in a way that's at, whatever plane of reality is considered normal by most people in I guess maybe the ego level, whatever that whole reality is. And I feel like a lot of people feel afraid even that I can't do that, or there's just a fear because people are just, people evolve differently. And so I wanted to make known, because I thought that this was such a destabilized time in our world, that look, I'm here to support, and that has almost nothing to do with my work. That's just something I do at the same time, and I always have and always will. And they're, it's sort of a Venn diagram. There is some overlap, but yeah, I thought it was important to be a voice of hope and compassion. So I yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that's a great summary of exactly what the post was, and that was, if it was in your intention, it clearly shined through. I mean, so let's talk about moving away from the actual context of what promoted the post, and we'll move away from the political stuff right now. But I would love to find out. We touched on this a little bit in the previous podcast we did together, but how? I mean, we spoke about this too, you must understand, at least at this point now, even from last time we spoke on the podcast, that not everyone has the ability or is even aware that there are other ways of looking at this situation. Some of the things you wrote in the post, talking about an ego that creates the illusion of separateness, that when you come from a heart space, you're able to, enact tremendous, positive effects on people. And when you look at suffering, it's hard because it makes you feel bad, but it really is the only way to do it. And it breaks down the boundaries of them versus us. How did you get to the point where you're able to realize that, right? That's the first step, but then also convey it in a way, whether it takes a couple of days to get it out in a difficult situation to promote it. How did you kind of get to that point? Do you know what I mean? In your life, not necessarily in this specific situation.
I guess in my life, I felt, for the majority of my life, I felt very separate. I haven't felt for a long, long time, I felt like I just I wasn't doing what I should be doing.
Mm.
And I was sort of taking a path that wasn't mine, which is very dangerous. That's one of the most dangerous things you can do.
I was just thinking about this. Yeah.
And that's a product of, my brain wasn't fully developed. I was still growing and learning, and I had to go through a pretty intense amount of suffering to get to the point where I realized it was just unsustainable.
Mm.
And I think, I mean, even though at the time I didn't understand what was going on, I didn't understand why I felt so separate. I mean, looking back, that was really the only way. And
right.
And I had to go through that period to learn that there are other ways and tools and exercises and things that we can do in our lives to live as we should be living.
Right. I mean, and also, to talk about, like, no mud, no lotus. Like, it's rare that you come to some level of realization about wisdom, compassion, all, many other good qualities that we're trying to cultivate and learn about. It's rare that you can get to those heights, if you want to refer to them to that, without experiencing the depths of your being. There's a flip side to everything, which I think is, something that is applicable right now for this country, right? Like, it's not just like clear, smooth sailing all the time. Like, the idea of Chogyam Trungpa's Shambhala society is essentially an enlightened society. That's what Shambhala is. And, we're not there, but the goal is to move towards there. And we do that by learning about ourselves and having to experience things. Like, nothing cultivates compassion more than going through a situation yourself and then seeing other people going through it. I think that's what ultimately kind of provides, the impetus or the desire when you see so many people being angry or upset, trying to alleviate that in whatever way you can. So that's interesting. I mean, I don't want to prod you too much on it, but what were some of the hard times that you had experienced that made you kind of feel separate? Was it just kind of like when you were a kid, you just kind of felt different than people, or was it a specific set of situations?
Yeah. Well, I guess to respond to what you were just saying previous to that question, I think that's a really interesting point that, and you can look at suffering as almost a psychedelic experience.
Totally.
You're able, just as you are during a psychedelic experience, sort of the way that, people are able to experience that in a semi-artificial sense by taking a substance.
Sure.
I don't know if the right word is artificial, but
synthetic. It's something. So this is a very. I've spoken about this on a few podcasts here. It's this idea of endo versus exo. Some endogenously experiencing something rather than exo outside experiencing something. So like I can feel bliss and happiness internally if I cultivate it with no other substances, foreign substances coming in. Or I can, take a shitload of mushrooms and get really giddy for the first 45 minutes. It's this very interesting interplay of endo versus exo that we discover. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
But either way, that's interesting. I guess either way, when you experience that type of transcendent experience, you are able to kind of look past the idea of separateness, and I think that you can feel that exact same way from suffering.
Yeah.
In terms of my life, it was just a general feeling, like kind of a general state of not being where I should be, and taking sort of the mask of illusion a little too far, like just really just acting for years. And it reached a point where I actually had like a physical reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
was sort of the breaking point where I developed panic attacks.
Oh, geez.
And so that got me. I mean, if I didn't have that, who knows? Maybe I'd still be
right.
Thinking that like money is the answer, or these thoughts that like I look back at myself even just 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and I'm like I truly don't recognize
right.
that
Isn't it
person.
funny? It's funny how that
It's
happens.
crazy.
I know. It's just one of those things. And then the even funnier part when that happens is we now think like, oh, we know so much now. Like, this is so great. And then 4 years, 5 years later, you look back and you go, oh my God, like, what, why did I think I knew so much? I didn't know shit. It's a funny.
That's you're lucky, Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not lucky. Then you look back 5 years and you say, hey, I was pretty cool.
That's a great point.
And that's a huge bummer.
Yeah, that's not some position you want to be in at all. I mean, that's this anxiety, and it's funny. When this podcast comes out, this one will already be out, but I'm gonna put it out tomorrow. My guest was a clairvoyant, clairsentient, basically, psychic, for lack of a better word. She was from New Zealand, and she, grew up with a lot of these gifts and, was in relative states of anxiety and uncomfortableness growing up, because it's like, how do you communicate when you're like seeing things that aren't there and, getting information before, and you're like 5 to like 12 years old. So what's funny is she ended up kind of suppressing, as she went through school, some of these skills and kind of feelings and stuff that was going on, but she developed this intense anxiety at a certain point where it basically became the catalyst. When she looked back, is like that anxiety is what ultimately pushed her to like discover her true path and who she was, and kind of like use her skills and gifts for the benefit of other people. It's a very interesting thing, like this no mud, no lotus concept. Suffering, always, there seems to be a direct correlation between suffering and cultivating aspects of your being that are spiritually important in life, and they very rarely feel good as you're going through them. I never had panic attacks per se, but I mean, I had experiences that, looking back, were not very pleasant, and especially sometimes mentally unstable. But like you look back at those kind of quote unquote negative things and you're like, you know what, I wouldn't trade it. Like, that was the thing that got me to where I am. So like, even though it was like shitty and bad, there's some, who I really think you should check out, because I think you would resonate on a lot of levels, is he's a Tibetan Buddhist teacher. His name is Mingyur Rinpoche. And he wrote a book called The Joy. Yeah, he's fucking awesome. But the reason I bring him up specifically is, so he is the son of a very famous Tibetan Buddhist teacher called Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche. And this is like a very accomplished teacher, and was one of the first to kind of like really do a lot of teachings in the West and kind of bring this stuff to light. But anyway, he was like, recognized as an incarnate Lama and like a special being from a very early age, and got put in this monastery and all these things. And he was very young, but he had crippling panic attacks. So can you imagine like being recognized as like a spiritual master and luminary, but like have panic attacks? So like he had to learn how to face that. And he used, various principles and tenets of Buddhism, like meditation and these other things, to kind of get around it. But he's someone who, if anyone has any level of anxiety about life and suffering and all the things we're going to have to deal with, death, shitty situations, political climates, I highly recommend him, because he's just got a really clear and concise way of presenting this stuff to Westerners that doesn't seem like foreign. And a big concept of his is that meditation shouldn't just be viewed as like a specific set of rituals that you do. Like, theoretically, anything you're doing in life can be meditation, as long as you're remembering and have the intention that it's meditation. And it's not like tricking yourself like, well, yeah, I'm gonna, smoke some crack and be meditating. But it's that you can cultivate an awareness inside of yourself that serves you for the better in a way. And I specifically brought it up because anyone, if they've experienced panic attacks, I think would get a lot out of this guy. So yeah, that's interesting that you had to deal with that specific issue. I've known a few people who had to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing experience. Like it was I mean, it literally felt like dying,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think it interestingly caused a part of me that needed to die.
Ego death, maybe partial ego death there.
Yeah, it was a really wild time, and yeah, it's odd to look back at who that was. You know, it's
Yeah.
pretty bizarre.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I will say I'm happy that you had to go through it, because when it turns into who you are now, which is like a lot of people know the comedy side of you. But one of my favorite things in getting to know you and, speak with you is that like there's a tremendous amount of depth and, multiple dimensions to who you are as a being, whoever Jay Weingarten is, that you've constructed and presented to the world, that I always enjoy. I know I shouldn't. I don't think this is how you should approach entertainers and entertainment, but I'm always very happy to hear when one of my favorite, either comedians or musicians or artists happens to be like a universally well-liked and like good person. Do you know what I mean? And thoughtful person. Like nothing warms my heart more when I've had the pleasure of interviewing people who knew Stevie Wonder personally, to be like, yeah, he's legit. Like just how you think he would be in real life. Like that's how he is. He's like a completely like smart, courageous, empathetic, like wonderful, compassionate being. And I'm like, oh, good. Because you don't want to hear that they're not this way. So I bring this up also because I think the best comedy stems, regardless of what the actual comedy looks like the final product, it stems from a place that's very deep within people, because it requires looking at situations and figuring out how to put that in a way that, even if it's tragic and sad, is still going to allow people to kind of like get out of that zone of like sadness, which is why when you were talking before, like how it's hard for you, you basically find it impossible when you're in like a depressed mood to do comedy. Like I don't find that hard to believe, you know what I mean? Because you have to kind of get in tune with the aspect of yourself that is going to provide levity. And how are you supposed to do that if you're not feeling like that in some way? So I'm always happy to hear and see when people have this kind of like depth to them that, regardless of what they're putting out there, shines through.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, you said some really nice stuff. I appreciate it. I don't think I'm universally liked. I mean, I know that there's some really, really nice people who support me, but I also think I like can scare some people, and I don't necessarily mind that. Although I mean, I guess naturally it's nice to. It's a more gratifying experience at the senses level, just to have sort of a nice interaction. At the same time, I'm not. I understand why people might get afraid, and I accept that.
Well, why might they?
Because I guess what I do challenges a lot of traditional values, and I mean it can be seen as a threat. I mean, it's like at this weird, deep, animal level of survival, and that's okay,
It's good.
That's okay.
I mean, I think there's a function there that needs to be examined. You know what I mean? Like when you present people with things that don't fit within the cultural norm of what people are used to seeing, that can be kind of a uncomfortable experience or, threatening experience, but ultimately like it obviously shouldn't be. And I mean, I think part of what you can do is put the lens on something and kind of exacerbate or, caricaturize a certain situation, and that gives it a level. Like, our buddy Vic is amazing at this. And Vic, I mean, I don't know if you know this, the exact same thing happened. I had Vic scheduled last week for Friday, and he hit me up the day before, and he's like, listen, man, I'm pretty bummed about this. I don't want to go on, the podcast and just be like negative. That's not who I am. And like, we had a long conversation. I was giving him some tips on like how to be mindful, because he was saying he was getting angry. And I'm like, dude, just like whenever you get angry, it's okay to be angry. Just like note in your head that you're getting angry. But why I bring Vic up is like, he does this thing where he's distorting reality only a little bit, but then amplifying that little distortion in a way that kind of makes people laugh and realize how crazy this is, but also really examine, like, this is someone who actually did that thing. These are these comedy things. And even with yours, it's based on kernels of truth. It's not totally made up shit. You know what I mean? Like there's a weirdness and, kind of a bizarreness to it at times, but it still is a mirror ultimately, that reflects back fundamental truths of people. I mean, I think that's what art, comedy, all of this stuff is. Like we're building mirrors in which to reflect back something at the audience and ourselves. So, I mean, I understand why people would find it threatening. I obviously don't. I think it's amazing. But okay, I want to shift gears a little bit, because I was really excited to see this. You're coming to my town in DC, and on the East Coast. Can you tell me a little bit about this tour you're about to go on? What, in a few days, right? Friday?
Yeah, I'm leaving on Friday, and I'll be going to Edmonton to meet up with my friend Cole Cush, a really brilliant animator. Has he done the podcast or no?
No, I would love to have him on. He did the animation for, yeah, he's awesome.
So he's an amazing guy. We're going to be driving with the band Walter TV to Toronto, and yeah, great, awesome band, and really, really excited to spend a bunch of time with these guys, and we'll be meeting with Mikey as well, and
cool.
And going to a whole bunch of cities in Canada and the United States, the Northeast. So yeah, I'm very excited. I guess if you live in that area, maybe check it out, see if you can stop by, and we'll get to talk for a bit.
Yeah, I'm going to put links up to the tour and all the places you're going to be so people can check it out. Have you done a tour like this by yourself? Not by yourself, but have you done this before?
Yeah, I've done. I did one that was called the Laugh Out Loud tour. It was Zach Braff's birth, sort of his trek, actually, from age of 21 to, I believe, 21 probably, because he graduated from Northwestern, and then he moved to Los Angeles, I believe, although I actually don't know that. But anyway, I think he lives in Los Angeles now, so we drove from Los Angeles to Chicago. So it was called the Laugh Out Loud tour. And actually at one of the places, they thought Zach Braff was coming. So that was, but he still loved the show. Actually, another place, to give you a good maybe example of your question from earlier, of like people who are just like just truly cannot process what I do,
right.
Like how my work at all. A guy came up to me in Denver and asked me on that tour, he asked me if somebody put me up to my set. Like, paid by some guy who was enemies with him or something. Like, it was unbelievable. So, yeah, a lot of weird things like that happen every once in a while. And it's just interesting. But yeah, I really appreciate a lot of people who are able to sort of look at a different level, approach life maybe a little differently, and yeah, there's some really, really, I've met some really great people.
What that's really funny that someone it was like an enemy it's like a smear campaign of Zach Braff, the Braff. That's really funny.
Yeah, it's so bizarre.
Who thinks that's such a weird thought to have and then express to the person?
That's what I do. That's what I do.
It's my life, man. What's it like? I always wonder what it's like getting up on stage doing any form of comedy to people. Like, what is it like for you when you get on stage, knowing that you're also like, there's a character there. It's not just you, Jay Weingarten's perspectives on the world said in monologue form. Like what do you do to kind of get ready for that? What's the experience like? And, is it enjoyable? Is it fun? And I know there's various emotions and feelings based on how a set is going and how a crowd is, but what's the actual process like for you?
Well, yeah, to be honest with you, one of the main reasons I started comedy, I mean, to me, comedy, I don't think I'm like really a comedian. Like comedy is more of an exercise. Way, like I use it as a tool, and I do different like experiences or create different things as just really as tools for myself. And and the truth is, yeah, when I first started, when I was thinking about starting, I was really just nervous because I had zero experience with anything in terms of entertainment. I mean, truly, I was on a path, to become like a doctor and stuff for a while.
Yeah, wow.
And that's what I thought I wanted to do. I didn't know, and then I was like, maybe a lawyer. I just didn't.
Sure.
And truly nothing I did when I was younger ever connected with me, except for truly loved and still love college football. So I think if I didn't, honestly, I think I would be like I could be a great football coach.
Who's your favorite college team?
Well, I went to USC, so USC. I mean, yeah,
a Trojan man.
Actually, had a great win over UCLA a couple days ago.
Cool.
But anyways, yeah, I mean, I just didn't feel connected to anything. Wait, what were we talking about again? I keep getting lost.
What's funny is I have this effect, I think, on people because sometimes I just go on tangents. We were talking about now you've lost me, Jay. Your confusion has confused me. I think you were talking about what connected with you when you were younger, what the experience of comedy was like, how you would get nervous doing it, how you use it as tools.
I had very little experience, but and I'd say the only other thing I ever liked doing in school ever was PowerPoints. And I was doing PowerPoint when, from the time I was like very young and doing them all the time. And I would do like school plays for my parents or not school plays, like little plays at home. And that was really it. Like I would have, and then I did like class videos once in a while. And somehow I didn't understand. I wasn't ready to understand that I should do the exact thing that was the only thing that gave me a source of joy, It's like, yeah, but that doesn't give you money. Or, I had all these insane excuses. So then, anyways, when I started comedy after I hit a point where I was like, okay, this path was definitely not who I am, and it was wrong. It would be wrong to do.
Right.
Then, I started comedy. I was very nervous. And I just I did it. Like my early material was so terrible. It was just like, very like traditional stand-up. It was just like I just did whatever was the easiest possible thing to achieve having done stand-up comedy. Because and like honestly, the rush I got from the first few sets was, I mean, I'll never hit that level again.
Really? Yeah.
It's unbelievable. So, and that was to get like no laughs. It was just the idea of being on stage holding a microphone.
Right.
It was incredible.
Right.
So then, and now as I do comedy longer, I'm losing my desire. I have almost no desire to do live comedy anymore. I really don't. Yeah, like I get it, and the idea of like honestly, the idea of comedy does feel like of live comedy feels like slightly dangerous, and just the whole of like getting immediate gratification, like there being a goal and sort of an achievement-based way of looking at life. It feels like easy and wrong in some ways. That's when I'm things in a very cynical and negative way. And the truth is, I'll be doing the practice on this tour and all.
Right.
And I do enjoy certain things about it. And I really like when it's able to like turn people on,
Yeah.
and have this light up maybe in way. And that's honestly the only reason I ever do it, is because I saw things when I was younger. Specifically, I had a moment watching the Stella shorts when I was a teen, and it was like one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had.
Right.
And feeling of being, just turned on to something new.
Yes.
And that I didn't know. And yeah, that's the only reason I do it now, is just in hopes that maybe it's like, casting out a line, and maybe there will be some people out there who get that same feeling.
Yes.
That's the goal.
I mean,
but I don't like the idea of like, I'm attached to the results of this joke. Like, to me, I don't know. That seems like, it's not really for me. And what I want to do is all I care about doing is doing things that no one has ever tried before, and hopefully those types of things will turn some people on.
See, I mean,
in
Jay,
new ways.
This is ultimately why I think you have a very good chance of being successful, because there's something that you've been touching on throughout this entire conversation, which I think I do not want to be lost. I doubt it will be, but it's this concept of Joseph Campbell's kind of answering the call, following your own bliss, regardless of what the situations look like external, the factors that say this isn't a good idea, but actually going with what really feels right. In a lot of ways, even if, like I said, logically, it's not even what you're doing. That's hugely important. I also, I want to delve into this still live. I mean, when you're talking about live comedy, are you talking also as like kind of a juxtaposition with like, more like Two Wet Crew stuff and kind of post-production comedy? Is that something you enjoy more, or is what do you love doing right now comedically?
Tons of stuff. Like, I have so many different ideas right now that it's crazy. And I'm working.
That's awesome.
Like, I'm working on a movie and a book and like a calendar and all these different
That's so
projects.
awesome.
Like, there's so much I want to get made, but mostly, in terms of live stuff, like, I'm much more interested now in a collaboration, like what you were saying, like, to at least take the ego out of it as much as possible,
Right.
Like, I'm doing it in this new tour. I'll be going with Cole Cush, and doing this new experience that's going to be pretty, I hope, entertaining to watch. It's I don't know if I want to do it exactly, because it's I guess we just want to try it out first. But if you can come to any of those states in the Northeast, maybe check it out. And I think, collaboration just feels a little better to me. Mm. But beyond that, I think I'm more interested in creating media and things that can be consumed at home or whenever, rather than live, because I think that's not really my true passion or anything.
I mean, it's awesome that you seem to be able to, and I'm sure it's not as easy as I'm about to make it sound, but it's really awesome that you can kind of get in tune with what makes you happy. I think people have a lot of trouble with that, right? I mean, I know it, myself included at times, but you set yourself up for a much better life when you respond to that call, when you follow the things. And I loved what you said about kind of the instant gratification, X plus Y equals Z formula. I'm sure just like me, you love tons of stand-up and tons of things, but for yourself that that's not something that payoff expectation thing isn't something you're interested in doing. And I also like that, another thing that I don't think you've explicitly said, but I mean, you did in some ways, but when you're creating things, you're trying to not wake people up, but have people resonate with your particular perspective or a way of looking at things. And I think ultimately that's the function of all creativity, right? It's to get things it's like when you ring a bell, if there's other bells around, they start vibrating and ringing too. And that's kind of what we do with art and creativity and all of these things. And I'm just I'm excited to see what you come up with in the next, months and years, because I think that is what's lacking a lot in the creative world because of kind of commoditization and commercialization of entertainment. So many things are derivative, and I don't use that exclusively in a pejorative sense. Like, some things it's good that there are like other things, but when there's a level of originality that also is in tune with kind of the depth or understanding or intention, I think that's when like really awesome shit starts to happen. And I know like when we're having this conversation, you're not like blowing up as an individual, but I would be surprised if you didn't in some way, like
I really don't think I ever do that.
I mean, you don't know. Here's the thing. You just don't,
I really don't.
You may not.
And that's fine.
Yeah, no, that's my point. And when I say blowing up as an individual, it doesn't mean like you have access. You might be surprised to find at some point in your life you have a pretty good access to mass consciousness, because I think, and especially if it's not your intention. Do you know what I mean? Like there's this weird thing that I've noticed in life with a lot of people I know, including myself, where when you just kind of start operating from a very open and honest place, shit starts to happen. And it doesn't mean like all your desires are fulfilled and all of a sudden you're super successful and everything is great, but the relationships you tend to form with people end up benefiting you down the line. When your main operating system is to help people, stuff starts to flow. Like I just think that, and I also think like you're onto something here with comedy as the vehicle that is helping people. And I think it's a necessary antidote. Like a lot of people, kind of complete the circle here with this Trump stuff, like, they don't want, it's hard for people to kind of see a way out of the anger and the fear. And it's up to people like you, not to put the pressure on it, but like, to give them other ways to engage with the world, to give them other alternatives that maybe aren't familiar or maybe aren't the narrative they're used to telling themselves, but that kind of pluck them up. Because like, imagine this scenario. Like, let's say someone watches something that you've done, and then they hear this podcast. They're going to have a tremendous insight into the whys and the reasons for you doing this. And I think that that's a powerful thing. So I wouldn't want any of that to get lost, that, the deeper part of your attention. And I think it's really healthy that you're not putting up like, I need all these people to be watching my stuff and doing my things, and I need to be super successful to be happy, because that's impossible. If that's your mindset, you're never going to be happy, right? That's like all these famous people, who are extremely rich, have millions of fans, they're not happy a lot of the time because they've set up an external goal for their happiness rather than following what actually makes them happy and enjoying the process along the way. So in a lot of ways, like I'm sure you realize this, you already are very successful in that sense.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think you are as well. I mean, a lot of what you're saying really applies to you. I think the fact that you're putting out some really eye-opening content at your network, I mean, I think that's an incredible thing to do. And releasing really important stuff. And you're doing great work.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I mean, I really, it's a weird time and this point in history and where we are to be very optimistic about the future, but I'm incredibly optimistic about a lot of things, not because I'm delusional, but because I just continuously meet people who get it, for lack of a better term, who just get it. Like they get why we're here. They get what this is about. They get that, like you said in your piece, that we're vehicles for each other's transformation. That's our function. And that we're fundamentally not different from those people. So, I mean, I love it. Let me ask you this. I gotta put Eli to bed over here soon, but did we do the color number animal thing last time we spoke, or was that before I was doing that?
I don't think we did that.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions and then we're going to wrap it up. So what is your favorite color?
Blue.
Nice. Mine too. What is your favorite number?
31.
Oh, that's interesting. Why 31?
I don't know. I just like it.
That's cool. My favorite number is 13. It's the reverse of that. What is your favorite animal?
The dog, definitely.
That's awesome, man. And I'm sorry that you have to leave the baby for your tour, but absence makes the heart grow fonder for both of you.
Yeah. I'm very excited. I think there's cameras that are available.
Yes.
At the place where she'll be watched. So I'm
That's
hoping
so
to
awesome.
At least check that.
That's awesome.
Can't wait to see her.
Before we wrap up, I've done the practical tip with you, so we're not going to do that. Is there anything you want to say? Anything you wanted that we didn't cover?
I don't know. I mean, I guess, did you have any other questions? Last questions, or?
I didn't. I just want to say that I very much enjoy having these conversations. I am sure I'm not the only one. Many people listening. I'd like to keep doing these because I think you're not only a very funny and cool guy, but your perspective on a lot of different things I think is a valuable voice for people to hear on a regular basis. So I'd love to continue doing these, man.
Yeah, I would love to as well. I don't think I made too many people laugh today. Definitely not. Not as the laugh meter is low.
Yeah, you're gonna need to get that laugh. Maybe you can do a PowerPoint that we can share with people. And I mean, as always, man, like I'm gonna link to all of the things that have been coming out from Two Wet Crew and anything else you want me to put up there, because this was a more, I don't want to say serious conversation. It was more kind of like a exploration of your consciousness, but I do not want to be lost just how fucking hilarious you are and some of the shit you're working on. So, it's not your function to be hilarious all of the time.
Thank you. Actually, do you hear that sound in the background? It's the baby eating, which is kind of like an ASMR thing. So I'll put my computer close to her. Here, listen to this. Hold on one sec. You hear that?
I did hear it. What kind of
that was pretty.
What kind of food do you give the baby?
Honestly, I don't really know. I'm not sure, but I would like to give her better food. So if you have any, I mean, really, it doesn't. It honestly doesn't matter at all. But if you do want a shirt or something, then I have a new e-store that's available. Weingarten e-store, I believe. I don't know.
I'm gonna have a link to it. Don't worry.
But yeah, it honestly doesn't matter, like truly. But if you happen to need a shirt or something, then I would. Yeah, you could buy it, and it's pretty nice, soft shirt. You can sleep in it or wear it anytime, and baby will get better food if you do that. But I didn't even mean that like that, because I'll get her better food no matter what.
I believe that, man. That's really I'll tell you, my poor dog, I got him when I was a vegan. I'm not a vegan anymore, and so we started him on vegan dog food, and he still eats that to this day. The poor bastard.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like, we're not cruel, but every time we try to feed him something else, he like poops funny, and so we just keep him on the vegan stuff, and he likes it. I mean, we'll give him tons of other stuff like throughout the day, just like scraps and people food, but yeah, he's on vegan. It's Halo. I think Ellen has the company. They make non-vegan dog food too, the same company, Halo. But the store thing. Yeah. Dude, totally putting a link up. I am going to absolutely encourage people to get this stuff. It's really funny. It's really cool.
There's shirts. There's bumper
mouse
stickers,
pads, right?
Mouse pads. There's magnets. There's pins. All sorts of different little, just fun images that you can have. It's very not super expensive, but also not a big deal at all. So anyways, it's just something to check out if you want. Also, you can just go to my website, jweingarten.horse, which is just an overall hub where you can go to the e-store, you can go to watch videos, Two Wet Crew, all sorts of fun stuff. So, but overall, just, thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Noah, for doing all of your amazing work. I really appreciate it.
Dude, it's my pleasure. And seriously, thank you for coming on. Good luck on the tour. I will see you on the tour, when you come to DC. So, man, thanks again. And
I don't know if we're going to DC anymore, but we're going to Baltimore. So
Baltimore. That's 45 minutes away. It's not too far. Not too far at all.
All right. Great.
Cool, man. Thanks so much for doing this, and we'll talk soon.
Okay. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Peace, man.
Bye.
Who likes Dream Boss? We like Dream Boss. Who likes Dream Boss? We like Dream Boss. That's my acapella Dream Bar ad. Guys, eatdreamb.com/sync. Go get some delicious Dream Bars. There's 3 flavors. There's not just the apple chamomile that I like. There's the tart cherry lemon balm. There's the banana lavender. Check it out. Like I said, get your Dream Bars today at eatdreamb.com. This is why I get paid the big bucks, guys. Thank you, Jay, for coming on. Thank you for listening to this episode. A reminder, you can subscribe to this podcast if you enjoy it. You can rate and review it, which helps the podcast grow. You can donate if you feel obliged to do so. Or you can just keep listening and tell your friends. That's always a fun thing to do. Got some really fun guests coming up for you. Until next week. Bye-bye.